There are two ways that the Constitution can be amended. They are both listed in Article 5 of the Constitution. There have been around 1,200 failed amendments, with only 27 of them being ratified by getting through one of the two processes. The first process involves a joint resolution that needs to be passed by 2/3 majority vote in Congress, and then 3/4 must approve the amendment to ratify it. The other way to amend the Constitution, which has never been used before, involves a convention called by Congress due to applications submitted by 2/3 of state legislatures. It needs to be submitted by 34 states for a convention to be called, and then 38 states need to approve it for the amendment to be ratified. The First Amendment is one of the most famous ones that almost everyone knows. The First Amendment protects freedom of speech, the press, and assembly. It defends the right that people can essentially say what they want, so long as it is not harmful to themselves or others, and it does not impede on the well-being of humanity. The Second Amendment process, the right to bear arms, means that with the proper permits, U.S. citizens are allowed to own and carry firearms on their person for protection. The Third Amendment protects homeowners from being forced to house soldiers in a time of peace without the consent of the owner. This amendment came to be because of the Revolutionary War, when British soldiers would force themselves into citizens' homes to live during the war. The Fourth Amendment protects a citizen from unreasonable search and seizure. It protects basic rights of privacy so that people can live without being searched unreasonably or with no incentive. The Fifth Amendment is a right against self-incrimination, and is where the Miranda rights come from, which are what everyone hears in criminal shows, such as you have the right to remain silent, anything you say can and will be used against you, etc. It essentially makes it so that you know that whatever you say could backfire on you, and it protects you from saying something that could incriminate you. It also gives criminal defendants a fair trial, and it states that the government may not seize property without making due compensations. The Sixth Amendment grants the defendant the right to a public and speedy trial. It also gives them the right to an impartial jury. This makes it so that someone in court gets a fair trial and they don't get treated or sentenced unfairly. The Seventh Amendment is a lot like the Fifth Amendment but deals with civil cases. If the compensation in debate exceeds $20, they get the right to a jury trial and the right that courts may not overturn the jury's findings. This again protects someone from unfair rulings. The Eighth Amendment protects someone convicted of a crime from excessive bail and cruel and unusual punishment. This means that if there is a bail to get them out of jail, it is not overly excessive, and if they are convicted of a crime, their punishment cannot be cruel or unusual. The punishment needs to fit the crime. The Ninth Amendment states that all the rights not listed in the Constitution belong to the people and not the government. This amendment grants all the rights that aren't mentioned to the people and not the government. They are not limited to just the rights in the Constitution. The Tenth Amendment is a continuation of the Ninth Amendment and states that the federal government only has the powers that have been listed in the Constitution. If it isn't listed, the power belongs to the states or the people. The 11th Amendment prohibits the federal government courts from hearing certain cases involving lawsuits against states. It helps establish the principle of state sovereign unity. The 12th Amendment outlines and revises how the president and vice president are elected, and most importantly makes it so that they are elected together. This helps so that it doesn't happen that the president is a different political party or alignment than the vice president. The 13th Amendment protects against slavery and involuntary servitude, except as a punishment for a crime where they were convicted and the punishment is not cruel or unusual. It ended slavery in the U.S. and anywhere else subject to their jurisdiction. The 14th Amendment states that anyone that was born in or naturalized in the United States are citizens of the U.S., as well as the state in which they reside. The 15th Amendment protects the rights of voting for all citizens of the United States. It states that it cannot be denied on accounts of race, color, or other previous conditions of servitude. The 16th Amendment allows for the government to collect taxes, mainly income taxes, from all Americans. The 17th Amendment allows voters to be able to cast direct votes for U.S. senators. Prior to its passage, senators were chosen by state legislatures. This made it so that voters had direct representation in the senators they voted for. The 18th Amendment had prohibited the manufacturing, selling, or transporting of intoxicating liquor. It did not prohibit the consumption, private possession, or production for one's own consumption, however. The 19th Amendment granted women the right to vote and made them equal to men in the voting process. The 20th Amendment moved the beginning and ending of the terms of the President and Vice President from March 4th to January 20th, and of members of Congress from March 4th to January 3rd. The 21st Amendment grants the states the ability to make liquor laws such as whether or not they are allowed to import or sell liquor, and they are also able to structure their liquor distribution system. This overturned the 18th Amendment and instead gave the states the power to make their laws. The 22nd Amendment solidified Washington's precedent that someone can only run and be elected for president twice. This makes it so that power is not held by one person for too long. The 23rd Amendment allows American citizens living in the District of Columbia to vote for presidential electors, who in turn vote in the Electoral College for president and vice president. This gave people in the District of Columbia representation in the voting of a president. The 24th Amendment removed all poll taxes in elections so that it was free to vote and anyone who wanted to could without needing to pay. The 25th Amendment states that in the case of the president being removed from office for any reason, the vice president will become president. The 26th Amendment states that people 18 years of age or older are able to vote and they cannot be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of age. And lastly, the 27th Amendment says that no law changing the compensation for the services of the senators and representatives can take effect until an election of new representatives has taken place. This makes it so that the senators and representatives can't make and change their own salary.